Hi, my name is Brian, and I'm the HiPop Professor. And today I want to talk a little bit about eye appeal versus value, grade versus price. These are some of the interesting details that as collectors we have to sort of wrestle with these kind of ideas and what's worth it to us. It's an important question, and one that I found myself confronting recently when I was looking to pick up an '84 Fleer Update Roger Clemens rookie card. As you may have seen in one of my previous videos, I actually did bring one to trade/sell, and I did in fact move it along at the Philly show. And I can put a picture of that right up here. However, the card that I had, I bought it because it was a really good deal, and I knew I could get better value for it than what I got into it. And while I do want to keep a version of this card for my PC, this particular one didn't exactly meet my eye. The centering wasn't quite where I wanted it to be. It was a little bit annoying. And so I decided to hold out for something a little bit better than that. And I'm excited today because I do have one to show you. But I also wanted to discuss another issue about card centering and how grading companies handle this and how values are impacted by this. So I'd like to go ahead and turn the camera around and offer some thoughts and a discussion and showcase a pickup that I have as well. So let's go ahead and turn the camera around and talk about some issues involving centering, grading, value, prices, and baseball cards. Okay, so I've got quite a bit of different topics to discuss today, and we're gonna hear all about it. So I'm gonna do my best. I can't promise this is gonna be brief, but I have quite a lot to say about things, and so I'm going to go ahead and just get started here. So as an 80s and 90s collector, who likes their cards to be in, just fantastic shape. I mean, mostly I live in the PSA 9 and 8 sort of territory. And I will just say, there are sort of limited ways for me to be able to dabble in the whole eye appeal movement. See, I love this eye appeal movement, the idea that we use our eyeballs to pick out cards that look good to us, that have the qualities that we're looking for. And yeah, not everyone, cares about the same things in their cards. Some of us are okay with the pinhole, Mr. Chilson, for example. Others, of course, and the reason why I'm showing this one is because I think this guy, not this guy, but this guy, Double D, Dylan, exemplifies the idea of the eye appeal movement and how we are looking to get into cards that please us, that are, well, in his case, well centered. And so look at this beauty in the Double D slab, of course. My centering grade of 95 for this Clemens Donruss rookie. Just a beauty. Razor sharp corners, dead centered. What a beautiful card. And it's interesting because, again, with the eye appeal movement, that's one of those things that vintage collectors are really, really good at. They are great at looking at cards, and their whole goal, when they're trying to sort of do their whole eye appeal thing, what they're doing is, looking for threes that, buying threes that look like sixes, and they have this amazing eye appeal. And yeah, there's something technically, some flaw, some defect, some fault with them that makes them a lower graded card, but it doesn't matter. In fact, in some ways, it's even better because they get an amazing looking card for a fraction of the price. And that's a lesson that as a 90s guy or an ultra modern, you don't see that as often, really, because I feel like ultra modern is, a lot of it is like, the ultra modern stuff is 10 or bust. Nines are selling for as much as ungraded, which I don't really understand that. And that's true with Pokemon, by the way, I'm finding out too. But the whole issue here is that you can get amazing looking cards for a fraction of the price of higher graded examples that look almost identical if you are patient. Now, does that happen all the time? No. And there are certain cards, if I'm looking for, an essential credentials or something that comes up, I'm not going to sit around and wait for a better one because this one, is a 7 and I'm looking for an 8 or a 9 or something. No. for high population wax era cards, cards from the 80s, early 90s, cards like that, you can kind of sit around and wait for the exact specimen that you want and then go for it. And that's kind of what I did here. So, because, in the 80s and 90s, most of these cards are going to be higher grades and there's not much variation. Most 9s and 10s kind of looks very similar. I'm not going to say they're identical, but there's not much variation in condition when the grade is up in the 8, 9, 10 range, as there is when you're looking at, 2s, 3s, and 4s. There's quite a variety of difference of what you can get there. And so what this leads me to is, well, a couple cards, and specifically a card from this set, 84 Fleer. This is a Tony Gwynn. This is not from the Fleer update set. This is just from regular old 84 Fleer. And this is it's a nice presenting card. It is not graded. It's not a high grade card. It'd probably grade out at about a 3 or a 4. It's got a little bit of warping. It's got some maybe a little bit of a crease there, soft corner or two. But it presents beautifully. Has excellent eye appeal. And something very interesting about this set specifically is that the centering is kind of weird. The vertical centering is weird. Now, I mentioned before, the eye appeal movement is about finding cards that meet your eye. Well, I will just tell you, for me, I'm a corners guy. I do like my cards to be well centered, and centering is becoming more important to me as I'm, spending more time back in the hobby. But this set is, I'm sorry, but it's just a little bit weird. The design is a little strange. The left and the right borders, of course, are, supposed to be the same. But this is actually about what you would expect on this kind of a card, where you have the white strip on top is noticeably thinner than this big old white strip on the bottom. And that's, I'm sorry, but that's just kind of a strange artistic design. It's supposed to just kind of look like that. And, to sort of put it in perspective, put it sideways. Imagine this was your left border and this was your right border. I mean, that's kind of a weird asymmetrical design, any way you slice it. Which, for me, well, there's two things about that. Number one, I kind of have a blind spot when it comes to vertical centering. And I've known about this for a while. It doesn't bother me. I don't tend to notice it as much as the horizontal centering. And so I figured, what I should probably try to do is I should probably look for, if I'm looking for a Clemens rookie in this 84 Fleer update set, it's not one of those cards, like I said, it's not a rare 90s insert where there's only a handful, serial number to a very low number. There's thousands of them, tens of thousands of them, just on the PSA pop report alone, probably, If you want to get something in a 7 or an 8 or a 9, there's really no shortage. And even 10s, there's probably thousands of them. I haven't looked, but I can guarantee you. So what I decided to do was I took the one that was noticeably off-centered, that had a very, very thin top on it, and I decided to hold out for one that met my eye. And so I came into this. And I'm covering up the grade, and I'm doing that for a very specific reason, because I have a point to make. And we're going to get there. But check out this card. Look at this beautiful card. Check this out. Fantastic corners. Fantastic edges. We've got just a little bit heavier on the right than the left, but still better than 45-55. And this card is just terrific. This is the card. This is the one that meets my eye. And interestingly, you'll notice the white strip is noticeably thicker than it is on this Gwyn. And when you compare them to each other, we can see, yep, this white strip is a little bit smaller on the bottom, and this one's a little bit thicker on the top. But considering how much more balanced this looks. This is the kind of card that pleases my eye. And so I wanted to talk about this because my question is, how does PSA measure the centering of an asymmetrical card? Or any grading company for that matter. I'll pick on PSA because some of these cards will be in, this card's in a PSA slab, sure. And some of the others I'll be talking about will be in PSA slabs as well. But how do they do it? I mean, really, how do they actually do it? I mean, what? The conventional centering, so there exists, right? You can get these, centering tools. You can put them over there and it can line it up with the numbers, and you can say, oh, okay, well, this border goes to the 3 line and this one goes over here to this line, and go to the conversion chart and look it up. Yeah, but when a card is supposed to look something like this, I mean, I guess my question is, where even is the border? How are they supposed to gauge centering on a card like this? 94 Flare Hot Gloves, Greg Maddux. Amazing card. But guess what? You send this card into Beckett, they're going to have to give a scale on the centering. They're going to rate it from a scale of 1 to 10. What distinguishes between a 9 centering and a 9.5 centering? Or a 10 centering? What, you're gonna hold this thing up there and no, there's no border. There's no way to tell. Or something, how about like a triumvirate, like a Stadium Club triumvirate, right? Here's a luminescent from 99, beautiful, gorgeous card. But how are you gonna measure centering on this? Thing's got the wildest die cut people have seen since the last millennium. You got these laser cuts in there going all through. There's no border here. How do they do it? I mean, at some point you just have to sort of eyeball it and say, yeah, it looks pretty good. And then hope you're not Beckett that has to put a number, 1 through 10 number on it. Or how about 2000? Same deal, right? Luminescent. How you gonna tell whether the vertical centering on this thing is 35, 65, or is it 60-40, or is it 50-50? I mean, who's to tell? I mean, there's so many of these cards. If a card like this didn't have the artist proof logo on it, then maybe you could say, oh, the distance between that logo and the edge, and compare it to the UC3 logo here and 95 UC3 artist proof Greg Maddux. Maybe. But really, how can you, if it's an asymmetrical design, there's tons of them, but maybe this was one of the first that started. And so that's kind of interesting. So I found this card, like I said, this is what I am, this is sort of the culmination of what I'm looking for here. So here's the deal. I'd like to go ahead and let's do a little experiment. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a picture on the screen of 2 of these Clemens rookie cards. And here's my question to you. I'm going to put them on there on the screen. And I understand that one of them might look a little bit brighter based on the lighting in the picture, how it was taken, and the other one might be a little bit less bright. But they're 2 beautiful presenting cards. And my question is, all right, well, which of these cards would you say looks like it's $1,500 more than the other one? Like, in other words, you have a choice, right? You get one of those cards for free. You get to just pick one up and take it. Which one are you taking? The one on the left or the one on the right? Choice 1 or choice 2? And really take a look at them. Now, because in fact, these cards, the actual market value of these cards are different by $1,500 at this very moment. So that's the difference in price. And you can kind of see where this is going. I have never made a secret about my confusion on how the prices, the valuation of these cards, the market, and how they treat 10s, the disproportionate value of them. But again, I have to go back to this, and I have to ask the question, because guess what? It turns out $1,500 is a lot of money. That's a lot of cards you can pick up. Oh, that's a really, really nice card you can add in lieu of just having a slightly nicer one. If you can even determine which the nicer one is. Which I guess the whole point is, if you can't even determine which one the nicer one is, then what are we doing spending an extra $1,500 on a piece of plastic or a flip? Anyway, Okay, let's give you a little more information. What if I told you that I scanned both of these cards into the card centering app? And that's what it's called, card centering. It's a really good app. It's a free app, free download. If you want some bonus features where it will actually tell you what PSA and Beckett and some of the other grading companies will actually grade your card out at, you can pay like a one-time fee of $3. And so I chose to do that because it's $3. But here we go. So take a look at the centering. So the centering of these two cards is nearly identical. Nearly identical. I mean, we're talking less than a 1% difference. Less than a 1% difference in the vertical centering, and almost the same left to right centering. So what do we have here? Does that change your mind a little bit? Which one would you take now? Does it matter? A 1% difference in centering? I don't know. So turns out my card, the one on the left there, that's the one that met my eye. And I have this beautiful Mint 9 OC. Yes, this is my very first grade qualifier addition to my collection. It is a Mint 9 OC card, and the other one, of course, is a Gem Mint 10. So let that sink in for a little bit. So some people view these qualifiers, the OCs, the MKs, the whatever it might be, miscuts, they might view them as a sort of a scarlet letter. They avoid these things like the plague. And really what's amazing about that is that the valuation, the demand is very low, which means these are prime targets, perfect targets for affordable, uber high eye appeal cards. I mean, this thing looks like a 10. I mean, look at it. It's amazing. It's an incredible card. But here's the kicker. A PSA 8 of this card, right? That will sell between what? 170 and 225. A PSA 9 will sell between 300, and there was one that sold for 460. That's a little high, admittedly, but usually between 3 and 350. Somewhere in there is about right. And the last couple PSA 10s, we're looking at like 1,700, 1,800. There was a sale at $19.99, $2,000. That's a little bit high, admittedly, but the sale did happen. So again, whether you want to spend $300 on a 9, or you want to spend $1,800 on a 10 that doesn't look that different, but I picked up this 9 OC for $161.50. That's the kind of amazing deal you can get by being patient, by holding out and waiting for the card that meets your eye, for using the eye appeal movement to determine what is important to you and to your eyeball. Now, there is one other troubling aspect of this, and it has to be said. How does a 1% difference in vertical centering lead a card to go from a 10 to a 9 OC? So an off-center designation, unless I miss my mark here, that means that the card is significantly off-centered enough. I mean, if it weren't worse than, well, what, 60/40 is the cutoff for a PSA 9, right? So if it weren't worse than 60/40, it wouldn't have any need for the OC designation because it would just say PSA 9, Mint 9. That's it. But a grader considered this card to be significantly more off-centered, which, at least more than that. And I'm not saying that they're wrong, but what I am saying is that a different grader at PSA at a different time said that the PSA 10 we just looked at was within their grading tolerance of a 10, which at that time they graded was better than 60/40. So where do we define those? It's kind of interesting. If you define the border as being the strip of white on the top and the strip of white on the bottom, then yeah, this card right here fits a PSA 10 qualifier. That's it. It fits a PSA 10 grade tier for centering. If, however, you're looking at just the white strip on the top and just under the writing on the bottom, under the picture, that little thin, razor thin margin, okay, that starts to get to that whole like 70-30. You start to dip into the 20s there, close-ish to 25-75. Okay, that's going to be right. That's where this OC designation comes in. But the fact is, they only gave one of these an OC. The other one, they gave a 10. So this issue with PSA's grading inconsistency, this is very real. I mean, these are happening daily. A card that is off-centered, approaching this sort of 70-30, 75-25 centering on the front, that would turn a 10 into a 6. Really, PSA 6. I mean, these kinds of grading inconsistencies can cost people thousands of dollars. So I leave you with this, and I recommend that you use your eyes, use your eyeballs to select the type of flaws that are acceptable to you in a card, aptly named as my appeal. So, another quick shout out to Mookie Chilson. One more final shout out to Dylan, Double D, Vintage Baseball Cards. And thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.